Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's virtue practice. So we're working with really another archetype of the will, which links us to the virtue of perseverance. When we look at all of the different virtues, some are more easy to perceive as virtues that really require a will activity. And of course, because of the nature of the virtue, because it is a practice, all of them actually ask for this individualized will to enter in such a way that we freely take hold of engaging with the virtue in a deed. That's the practice we're looking at this year. And this deed does not have to be a great or grandiose deed relating to the virtue, such as devotion that we've already passed through. It can be that each morning you just choose to drink that cup of tea in a devotional way, but some way of engaging the virtue to a practice that's will-filled. Now, when it comes to perseverance in its nature, it's already will-filled. And this is, just a few months into the year, and some of you already feel the kind of difficulty in persevering in those decisions, those practices that you chose to take on. And so perseverance is one of those archetypes for inner development. It's an archetype for meditation. It's an archetype for self-transformation. And so we don't just hear about this perseverance in the 12 virtues as these streams of the development through the yearly course. We also hear that throughout various offerings around inner development. We see it there in the 6 exercises. We see it there as an archetype to the practice in itself of meditation. The more we are able to persevere, the more we are able to cultivate a greater capacity in the will. Now, all inner development has a aim in one way to grow the capacities, the inner soul capacities of thinking, the inner soul capacities of feeling, and the inner soul capacities of will. But we realize how important the will is because of its relationship to the individualized spiritual will. Now, of course, we can have will, but to persevere, we are calling upon something that is really this awakened will every time we sit to do a meditation or every time we engage with a practice where we're not doing it out of a habit. So perseverance is very central, and it is central for many reasons. For one of those reasons is it's because the superficial kind of work upon an activity doesn't penetrate through into those deeper realms of the spiritual world. We might have a fleeting thought, but that is not necessarily going to be a revelation of transformation unless we can work upon that thought. And this happens for people in their meditative practice, in their inner development, where they may receive something, an experience, a symbol, an insight, even a revelation that makes them recognize, now I really, really know what is being spoken here esoterically. I have an insight that is truly now mine. However, you would also be aware of how that insight can fade away. And so perseverance in itself can have a essential aspect of re-engaging with the very insights that you have been offered. So this is an exercise in itself that I am going to work with much more deeply in the St. John's course, which we'll put a link for below. But just as one way of working with this, if you do receive something that you know is a real revelation to your soul, it may be some words that you read, it may be something that illuminates in your meditation, it may be one of those moments of conversation where something drops in that begins to feel like it has the potential of transforming the way you've seen life before, then it's very useful here to use that moment and rebuild it, revisit it again, to persevere even with that same insight. Now, there are varying techniques or exercises that help us to sort of break open these gifts that come towards us. But often what happens, we have the gift, and because we don't re-engage with it, we don't persevere with it, it seems to fade, or we forget it, or even deny that it happened because it becomes sort of faded in the consciousness. But if we can re-engage with that, if we can rebuild that image again, rebuild that insight, not just in thought, but also in feeling, and engaging with this will that's persevering, you may find that that gift keeps breaking open, revealing more and more to you. Now, this is something that I have learnt through working with hundreds of people, that they often have spiritual insight. They often awaken to something that's incredibly true, but then they allow it to sort of dissolve into a past memory rather than to recall it again and, in a way, keep working with, persevere on what has been offered to you. Persevere in bringing that back again, rebuilding that image, both in thought and in feeling, with your engagement of your will. And then after you've rebuilt it and held it as though it's reoccurred again, as dynamically, then you can release it, extinguish it, and keep aware of the inner activity that reverberates back. What else wants to speak? What else is revealed in this? Let's not stay on the surface of the experiences that we have, but even those very deep experiences have more to reveal to us if we are to persevere with them. So you can take something from an experience that you've had and use that as part of the perseverance exercise for this coming month. But you could also use perseverance in a very different way. And I would say that finding something that you are certain is working towards the good, the true, towards love in your life. It could be something very small that you choose to will with, but that you feel certain that this is worth persevering in. And to then act upon that. So why do I say certain? Because there is this perseverance that leads us to this faithfulness, because we know that there is something true behind it. Faithfulness is not a blind faith. It's a deep knowing that there is something true in this. And this is one of the aspects that Sinus said about perseverance, that we do not give up unless it's revealed to us that now we need to persevere in something else, particularly those things that we're certain of. Rather, it's so easy today with the way the will is being orchestrated that we don't persevere in something that we've once knew was true, once was absolutely certain of. But once you get to a point where you've realized, okay, now I'm clear that it's time to change that will activity, then of course we can change. So it's not staying like a dog with a bone that you persevere forever, regardless of the insight that comes, but rather until you become clear that this is completed, this is understood, or this has given what it needs to give. So there are a few ways to work with perseverance. In fact, there are many ways. But what is significant is looking at what are the things that happen to me that need to be in a one-way reviewed, and what are the things that happen that need to be rebuilt. As I said, this will be developed further in the St. John's course, but for the month of perseverance, we can really look at what are the things that I'm certain came from the spiritual world. What am I certain of leads me towards the spiritual world? What am I certain of that is love, that leads me towards love? And in that certainty, that's where we persevere. That it's not useful to put your will to persevere towards something that you are unclear of where it is leading, unless you're certain that this has been given as a gift from the spiritual world. And then I would work with this, rebuilding it. Don't forget these gems that are often given in our life, these seeds that are planted and that need our perseverance so that they may grow and come to the fullness of what they are wanting to reveal to us. So again, we would maybe do this inwardly in the activity of this will exercise to persevere in rebuilding an insight that we have had in our life. Or we may do this outwardly, where we recognize there's a particular deed that I'm certain leads me forward. And then once we have performed that deed or built that picture, we will then follow the stream of the will. And that comes down into the head, down the front of the face, down into the neck, down into the chest, and in and around the heart. And for those of you that are then following the verse, you could also work with this verse. And in itself, the exercises through the course of the year are already perseverance. And those of you that are also following the eurythmy, you can really see how this working of the will, this development of the will, helps us to persevere in all inner development.
Reveal yourself, life of sun. Stir up what tends to rest. Embrace what desires to strive towards a mighty prevailing of life, towards a blessed knowing of worlds, towards a fruitful maturing of growth. O life of sun, endure. And place your attention on the streaming activity awoken from engaging with the words in the verse, streaming from a source above the head to the crown, and down from the top of the head through the face and neck, into the chest, streaming down into the heart.
Gemini. Hello, welcome to Yellow, Gemini, and this month's virtue and constellation, zodiac constellation of Gemini. So yellow, the light shining in, rain out, and I'm sure you'll know that if you've got a bush in your garden with yellow flowers, it stands out more than anything else in your garden. Or if you're painting on paper yellow, it runs everywhere. So that gives you a little bit of an indication of the activity that we need to bring this gesture of Gemini in. So some of you may have only just arrived at this site for the first time, and we're working with will exercise with eurythmy, eurythmy being a sacred form of movement. And if you would like to, you can go back to the beginning and find the introduction, where you'll learn another exercise called the ERO exercise. And this is a very special exercise that we will always have in the beginning of our practice. So there's that, and then there's also the other 2 months, which is Aries, which was red in colour, and Taurus, which was orange. But all of these eurythmy gestures, and there's more than just the zodiac gestures, are helping us to make a bridge to the cosmos. And this health-giving forces that ray back from the cosmos towards us. And I'm sure some of you know that with the zodiac gestures comes in particular body parts of the human being. So it's like these life-giving forces rayed in from the cosmos, the first one being the Aries that formed the head. Then came Taurus, which helps to form the larynx. And now we've got the symmetry coming in. So really this yoke here, or this collarbone, that allows this movement from our left to our right, movement into our arms, into our hands, comes about with the symmetry. So that was the gesture that you saw me do in the beginning, that gesture of Gemini. So the other thing that you really need to know about eurythmy is that the inner activity is very important. So this inner activity of your activity, it's not my activity, it's your activity, will help to build this beautiful bridge or connection to the spiritual world. So yes, I need to teach you the gestures, but once you know the form of the gesture, then you need to move away from the computer and practice that gesture and find how it starts to live in you inwardly. How this gesture of Gemini arises in you. Because I can't give it to you through the screen. You have to will it into your body as well. So this gesture of Gemini is from two sides. It's from the right and from the left. The arms fold in front of the chest, and we have this symmetry. And the hands are lightly curled as they come in, and it's raining in and crossing the arms in front. Gemini. And one hand is tucked in, the other one is tucked in as well. And our feet are turned in slightly too. So if I go back a little bit, the feet are turned in just a little. And that happens at the same time as we do this eurythmy gesture for Gemini. So it's this with the feet and the arms all at the same time. Rain in the light, but the light's still shining out into the world. And at the same time, if we're doing this gesture, the cosmos can also come towards us with the healing forces. So in the beginning, I give you an introduction to eurythmy, which brings the E-R-O, and that's important to do to start with. And again, finding your streaming that comes with the E, with the R and with the O. And then we go into the Gemini gesture. And again, there's that moment where the streaming will come from the cosmos. And then at the end of the Gemini gesture, we allow the cosmos to bring this in, streaming in through the top of our head really, and across the forehead on the inside, down to the throat area, still on the inside, going down towards the heart. And there, with this streaming in, we have this virtue of perseverance. So perseverance, this virtue coming into the human being and arriving at the heart, where we also have our perseverance. And so the two meet and form something new. So now I'm going to go back and we'll try this together. So 3 times E-R-O, once the Gemini gesture, then the in-streaming, which we will stand in for 1 minute. So I've already spoken you through the streaming. So at the end of the Gemini gesture, we will stand silently for a minute while this streaming takes place into our heart and forming something new from perseverance. Gemini. Streaming.
I am the one who shines through you.